Welcome back. Week number 2, deuces. Hey, excited to be in your home or wherever I'm at it right now with the people who are around you. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. As we jump in this influencers number 2 week, hopefully had a good discussion before. And today I just want to talk about a little bit how all of us have influence. All of us. I'm going to read a few things, and I think it's amazing as we talk about influencers. We talked about that before, how there's influencers in social media and everything. But today I just want to talk briefly just about influence in itself. The word influence, I want to read this, it's kind of defined as the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something, or the effect of itself. It really, truly means to influence, to nudge, to help change, if you think about it, leadership is influence. Discipling is influence. Having influence over another person, helping them develop and change. The power to bring positive or negative change is the power of influence. And so that's why we raise a question of saying, who am I following? Who has influence over me? Who am I looking for? And we're going to go into that more in the next few weeks. And so, but everyone, I want to say this, has some kind of influence. Everyone. One of the things they say in leadership is, if you want to know if you're leading someone, just look behind you who's following you, which is true. But I also want to say is that we all carry some kind of influence. Who we are, people are watching, and so everyone is influence of other people. In the ways you connect, in the ways you live, from people from church to people in your neighborhood to people at your work and your family, your influence is constantly growing, or sometimes is shrinking. And so I want to kind of dive into the first question, just kind of off the beginning here. And here's what I want us to kind of talk about as your own group. Here's the first question. In what ways do I influence those around me? In what ways do I influence those around me? You might be a parent. You might be working with somebody. You might be a student. You might be on a football team. You might, sports, or you might be whatever it may be, but how do you influence those around? I just want to have conversations how that looks for you. Welcome back. Influence is a big deal. And I just want us to understand this main point, that as believers that you and we're all called to be influencers. We're all called to do it. I know sometimes it's heavy to hear, like it's your responsibility. But it's a kingdom business, and we're called to help bring influence and change. I want to read the scripture to you, 2 Corinthians 5:20. The New Living Translation. It says it this way. It says, "So we are Christ's ambassadors." What a cool word. Christ's ambassadors. God is making his appeal through us. We speak for Christ when we plead, "Come back to God." Isn't that an awesome verse? We speak for Christ when we say, "Come back to him." When we try to influence. The word ambassador is pretty awesome because it's actually, you're a representation from a country. What's cool about it is that if somebody came here from, let's just say, Africa, and it was an ambassador for Africa, even at their own home, they would have an American flag, or they would have a flag. They can actually hold their country's flag up. And actually, in most countries, where they live is actually considered part of their homeland. Like where you live, you are a representative of that place. Like you are coming to bring that country or that place. When they say you are Christ's ambassador, now we're thinking kingdom. You are Christ's representation of the kingdom of God. You you go with the authority, you go with the representation, you go with the flag that you are part of the kingdom of the Lord. I think that's amazing. You're Christ's ambassador. Like, it may not, the place you're living may not be home, but you're bringing your home with you. That is, to me, that carries so much significance because you are the ambassador, which means you bring the influence. This speaks volumes that you are the influencer, that you are the person going to help handle negotiations. You're going to help bring conversations to the table as Christ's ambassador. And so Jesus is called you to be an influencer, an ambassador for his kingdom. Love it. It's interesting, and we are called to be influential to people, to have the power to influence others, not to control, but to represent who Jesus Christ is. I want to read this. You have the ability to make an impact on someone's life, even if it feels like you don't have all yours together. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to know you're forgiven. You have to just carry your cross. Everything you do at home, at the game, at school, at work, at church, can have an influence on somebody else. You don't have to have it all together to influence somebody to Jesus Christ. My next thought, my question going into this next one is this: how can I be more influential? How can I be an ambassador in my life, in my work, in my school, my family? How can I represent the kingdom, the ambassador, influence of people? Think of ways how you've been gifted to be an influence. Go ahead. Welcome back. It's interesting because we all have influence. We're all called to be ambassadors. We all have influence. Now, the big question is saying, is the influence you are having positive or negative? Is your influence on others positive or negative? I want to read this verse with you, Romans 14, 12 through 13. It says, each of us will give an account of himself to God. Each of us will give an account to God. Try to live in such a way that you will never make your brother stumble by letting him see you doing something that he thinks is wrong. It's amazing because it's just simply saying, be careful what you do. Are you causing somebody else to stumble by your actions? A lot of people hate that thought because they say, well, you know what I'm saying, I can do what I want. I can, you know what I'm saying, it's my life to live. You know what I'm saying, I don't have to worry about anybody else. I think it's very important for us to realize that the decisions you make will affect somebody else and the weight that carries. I think so many times we just carry it ourselves and say, it doesn't matter what I do, it only affects me. That's one of the greatest lies that anyone will ever tell you, that it only affects you. Even what you do in private will affect other people because it affects you. What affects you will affect other people because of influence. It's amazing how as we look at this, there's actually, if you're ever faced with a decision, if you're ever faced with what to do, or there's a thing called the influence test, which is simply one question to ask, which is this: will this harm other people? Will it hurt somebody? Well, we think, well, I won't affect anybody. But really it does. What we do at times will affect somebody else in life. The way we react, or what we say, or what we don't show up to, or the way we are, or even the little lies, they carry something. I think that's important. Even as I say this phrase, it's going to make you go, ooh, but people are watching. People are watching the way you are. People are watching the way I am. People are watching, and the more influence you have, the more impact your decisions will be on other people. The greater influence you have, the more your decisions carry weight with other people, because now people are watching, now people are part, and you're like, I don't like it. As we follow the Lord, and this is not just following the Lord, it's like leadership. The more people that you lead and influence, the more that decision will carry weight. I think of this myself as even a parent and as a pastor. The decisions I make affect my kids, but also affect the church. The decisions you make as a parent, the decisions you make as an owner of a business, the decisions you make as this. This is why we need to make decisions in prayer. This is why we need to be in prayer and be in the Word. I want to read this. It says, Romans 15, 1 through 2. It says, even if we believe that it makes no difference to the Lord whether we do these things, still we cannot just go ahead and do them to please ourselves. For we must bear the burden of being considerate of the doubts and the fears of others. Be considerate of those around us who have doubts and fears. And so, how am I influencing those around me? How am I influencing my kids? Am I making decisions and making life things that I want others to model? That's a big question. Am I being an example of my modeling my faith that I want other people to follow? Am I being an example? 1 Timothy 4:12 says it this way, set an example for believers in speech, in life, in love, in faith, and in purity. To live a life of example, to be a model. We don't pass on what we don't model. But we do pass on what we do model. Are you happy with what you're passing on? Even as my own life, I look at we all have influence. We all share the weight of saying, it's not my life. I carry the burden of saying, this life is not my own. It is counterculture. But I'm carrying the weight of the gospel to further the kingdom, to be an ambassador of the Lord. As we close with this last thought with the group, think about the people in your own life and who you can strategically go after and influence. Ask yourself this question. Who is God asking me or calling me to influence? Who in my life do I maybe need to be a better example for? Who I need to build a better connection with? Who in my life, and is just an easy question to ask, but it's a harder question to answer. Am I being the influence I want to be? Kind of two-part question, but I think it's important for us to ask these questions. So, is there people in my life who God has put in my life to help influence? And am I being the influence that I want to be?